Thunder Rose by Jardine Nolan, illustrated by Kadir Nelson. Rose was the first child born free and easy to Jackson and Millicent Magruder. I recall most vividly the night she came into this world. Hailing rain, flashing lightning, and booming thunder pounded the door, inviting themselves in for the blessed event. Taking in her first breath of life, the infant did not cry out. Rather, she sat up and looked around. She took hold of that lightning, rolled it into a ball, and set it above her shoulder, while the thunder echoed out over the other. They say this just accentuated the fact that the child had the power of thunder and lightning coursing through her veins. "She's going to grow up to be good and strong, all right," Doc Holliday said. The child turned to the good doctor with a thoughtful glance and replied, "I reckon I will want to do more than that. Thank you very kindly." Recall. If you recall something, you tell about something you remember. Vividly. If you remember something vividly, you have a clear, detailed memory of it. Accentuated. If something is accentuated, it has attention drawn to it, shifting her gaze to the two loving lights shining on her, which were her ma and pa. She remarked, "Much obliged to you both for this chance to make my way in the world." Then she announced to no one in particular, "I am right partial to the name Rose." So much in love with this gift of their lives, her ma and pa hovered over her in watchful splendor. Overcome with that love, they lifted their voices in song, an old song and a melody so sweet and true, a lullaby passed down from the ages, echoing since the beginning of time. Partial. If you are partial to something, you prefer it more than other things. Splendor. The splendor of something is its great beauty or impressive appearance. "There is a music ringing so sweetly in my ears," the newborn exclaimed. "It's giving me a fortunate feeling, rumbling deep in the pit of me. I'll register it here at the bullseye set in the center of my heart, and see what I can do with it one day." Rose snored up plenty that first night, breathing on her own, rattling the rafters on the roof right along with the booming thunder. There was nothing quiet about her slumber. She seemed determined to be just as forceful as that storm. With the thunder and lightning keeping watch over her the rest of the night, her ma and pa just took to calling her Thunder Rose. The next morning, when the sun was high yellow in that billowy blue sky, Rose woke up hungry as a bear in spring, but not the least bit ornery. Minding her manners, she politely thanked her ma for the milk, but it was not enough to quench her hungry thirst. Rose preferred, instead, to drink her milk straight from the cow. Her ma was right grateful to have such a resourceful child. No other newborn had the utter strength to lift a whole cow clear over her head and almost drink it dry. In a moment's time, Rose did, and quite daintily so. She was as pretty as a picture, had the sweetest disposition. But don't let yourself be misled. That child was full of lightning and thunder. Out on that paper bag brown, dusty, dry, wide open space, Rose often was found humming a sweet little tune as she did her chores. And true to her word, Rose did more than grow good and strong. The 2-year-old became quite curious about the pile of scrap iron lying next to the barn. Rose took a good sized piece, stretched it here, bent and twisted it there. She constructed a thunderbolt as black as pitch to punctuate her name. She called it coal. Wherever she went, Cole was always by her side. Noticing how skilled Rose was with the metal, her pa made sure there was an extra supply of it always around. At the age of 5, Rose did a commendable job of staking the fence without a bit of help. During her 8th and ninth years, Rose assembled some iron beams together with the woodblock she used to play with and constructed a building tall enough to scrape the sky, always humming as she worked. By the time she turned 12, Rose had perfected her metal bending practices. She formed delicately shaped alphabet letters to help the young ones learn to read. Resourceful. If you are resourceful, you are good at solving problems quickly. Disposition. Your disposition is the way you tend to act or feel. Commendable. If you do something commendable, you do it well and earn praise. For his birthday, Rose presented her pa with a branding iron, a circle with a big MAC for Magruder in the middle. Just in time, too, because a herd of quick-tempered longhorn steer was stampeding its way up from the Rio Grande. They were plowing a path straight toward her front door. Rose performed an eye-catching wonder, the likes of which was something to see. Running lightning fast toward the herd, using Cole for support, Rose vaulted into the air and landed on the back of the biggest lead steer like he was a merry-go-round pony. Grabbing a horn in each hand, Rose twisted that varmint to a complete halt. It was just enough to restrain that top bull and the rest of the herd. But I believe what touched that critter's heart was when Rose began humming her little tune. That cantankerous ton of beef was restless no more. He became as playful as a kitten and even tried to purr. Rose named him Tater, on account of that was his favorite vegetable. Hearing Rose's lullaby put that considerable creature to sleep was the sweetest thing I had witnessed in a long, long time. After the dust had settled, Ma and Pa counted 2,700 head of cattle, after they added in the 500 they already had. Using the scrap iron, Rose had to add a new section to the bullpen to hold them all. "What did you do to the wire, Rose?" Ma asked, surprised and pleased at her daughter's latest creation. "Oh, that," she said. "While I was staking the fence, Pa asked me to keep little Barbara J company. That little twisty pattern seemed to make the baby laugh, so I like to think of it as Barbara's wire." "That was right clever of you to be so entertaining to the little one like that," her ma said. Rose just blushed. Over the years, that twisty wire caught on, and folks just called it barbed wire. Rose and her pa spent the whole next day sorting the animals that had not been branded. "One day soon, before the cold weather gets in," she told her pa, "I'll have to get this herd up the Chisholm Trail and to market in Abilene. I suspect Tater is the right kind of horse for the long drive northward." On Rose's first trip to Abilene, while right outside of Caldwell, that irascible, full of outrage and ire outlaw Jesse Baines and his gang of desperados tried to rustle that herd away from Rose. Using the spare metal rods she always carried with her, Rose lassoed those hot-tempered hooligans up good and tight. She dropped them all off to jail, tied up in a nice, neat iron bow. "It wasn't any trouble at all," she told Sheriff Weaver. "Somebody had to put a stop to their thieving ways." But that wasn't the only thieving going on. The mighty sun was draining the moisture out of every living thing it touched. Even the rocks were crying out. Those clouds stood by and watched it all happen. They weren't even trying to be helpful. Why, the air had turned so dry and sour, time seemed to all but stand still. And there was not a drop of water in sight. Steer will not move without water. And that was making those bulls mad, real mad. And when a bull gets angry, it's like a disease that's catching, making the rest of the herd mad too. Tater was looking parched and mighty thirsty. I've got to do something about this, Rose declared, stretching out several iron rods lasso fashion, then launching Cole high in the air. Rose hoped she could get the heavens to yield forth. She caught hold of a mass of clouds and squeezed them hard, real hard, all the while humming her song. Gentle rain began to fall, but anyone looking could see there was not enough moisture to refresh two ants, let alone a herd of wild cows. Suddenly, a rotating column of air came whirling and swirling around, picking up everything in its path. It sneaked up on Rose. Whoa there, now just hold on a minute, Rose called out to the storm. Tater was helpless to do anything about that sort of wind. Those meddlesome clouds caused it. They didn't take kindly to someone telling them what to do, and they were set on creating a riotous rampage all on their own. Oh, this riled Rose so much. She became the only two-legged tempest to walk the western plains. You don't know who you're fooling with, Rose called out to the storm. Her eyes flashed lightning. She bit down and gnashed thunder from her teeth. I don't know why anyone would want to mess with a pretty young woman who had the power of thunder and lightning coursing through her veins. But pity for them, the clouds did. Rose reached for her iron rod, but there was only one piece left. She did not know which way to turn. She knew coal alone was not enough to do the job right. Alone was not enough to do the job right. Unarmed against her growing thirst and the might of the elements, Rose felt weighted down. Then that churning column split, and now there were two. They were coming at her from opposite directions. Rose had some fast thinking to do. Never being one to bow down under pressure, she considered her options, for she was not sure how this would all come out in the end. Is this the fork in the road with which I have my final supper? Will this be my first and my last ride of the roundup? She queried herself in the depths of her heart. Her contemplations brought her little relief as she witnessed the merciless, the cataclysmic efforts of a windstorm bent on her disaster. Then the winds joined hands and cranked and churned a path heading straight toward her. Calmly, Rose spoke out loud to the storm as she stood alone to face the rack and ruin, the multiplying devastation. I could ride at least one of you out to the end of time, but I've got this fortunate feeling rumbling deep in the pit of me, and I see what I am to do with it this day, Rose said, smiling. Devastation. Devastation is terrible damage or complete destruction. The winds belted at a rumbling pitch. Rose squarely faced that storm. Come and join me, winds. She opened her arms wide as if to embrace the torrent. She opened her mouth as if she were planning to take a good long drink. But from deep inside her, she heard a melody so real and sweet and true. And when she lifted her heart, she unleashed her song of thunder. It was a sight to see. Rose making thunder and lightning rise and fall to the ground at her command, at the sound of her song. Oh, how her voice rang out so clear and real and true. It rang from the mountain tops. It filled up the valleys. It flowed like a healing river in the breathing air around her. Those tornadoes, calmed by her song, stopped their churning masses and raged no more. And gentle as a baby's bath, a soft, drenching, and soaking rain fell. And Rose realized that by reaching into her own heart to bring forth the music that was there, she had even touched the hearts of the clouds. The story of Rose's amazing abilities spread like wildfire, far and wide, and as sure as thunder follows lightning and sun follows rain, wherever you see a spark of light flash across a heavy steel gray sky, listen to the sound of thunder and think of Thunder Rose and her song. That mighty, mighty song pressing on the bull's eye that was set at the center of her heart.